even when she was older, when I lived, I guess the last time of my life I got to spend with grandmothers when I lived in Provo, and she moved there her last years living in the assisted living center there. And she attended church every Sunday there too. So
as an adult, memories that I have, I played the harp, and I remember bringing it to where Grandma was staying in Provo. I would bring my harp to Jamestown. I did it a few times, and I would play just because I wanted to do something nice for Grandma. And I remember doing that. I remember coming to visit her and just talking with her. There was a place where they had birds. I just remember sitting there and talking with her.
And Mother was always smiling, and she had twinkles in her eye. The dentist used to say when she was 90, 94, 95, "I can still see your twinkles." Then he'd look at us to see if we twinkled as much. None of us quite did. But she always was very pleasant and happy.
When they invited her at age 95 to go to the Dixie College homecoming because she was the oldest living D queen, she declined. She didn't like being in the spotlight. It made her uncomfortable.
One of the last times where she was very sick, she was in the rehab center at this time. And I remember just going in to see her, and she wasn't really coherent. But it was one of the last times I saw her. And I just remember she was sort of asleep, but I just remember that what was on the television when I came in was a rebroadcast of the Young Women General Meeting, or the Relief Society General Meeting. And I just thought, here's my grandmother, way up in years, and just, what is she watching? She's watching conference. And I just remember watching Grandma sleep and sitting and listening to that.
I was with my mom when she found out that Grandma had passed away, because there had been a hurricane in Texas, so my mom and they prayed about it, and they felt like that they should leave, but a lot of people stayed and they were fine, but they felt like they should leave, so they drove 2 days across to Arizona to get out of kind of the hurricane zone area. And as soon as they left, they shut down all of the transportation. The airport was shut down, the bus lines, everything. So it was such a blessing. Because of that, she found out like a day later, and then there she was in Phoenix. We just drove the day up, and we were able to go to the funeral. But I remember, was it Aunt Jeannie that called my mom? And I just remember feeling very solemn and reverent. And my mother was expecting it, but I just remember it was like a little moment in time, of eternity, that just a little moment that a great woman had gone on. And I remembered on the birth of my first child, Maymina, my mother was there with me too, and she was there welcoming Maymina into the world. They came and visited at the hospital when I was in labor. Just that little moment of time when my daughter entered into this world. And just those little slivers, I felt they were so meaningful to me, that my grandmother, my mother, and me, that we were all there during the passing and the coming of this earth life.
I played the harp at Grandma's funeral, and I remember Aunt Mary sitting next to me and singing while I played. So because I was playing the harp, I just did a lot of watching out of the corner of my eye, and I remember so many people coming. I remember my mom crying every now and then, and that was hard for me to see. I remember looking at Grandma and thinking, oh, that's not her. You could totally tell that her spirit was gone, because it was still Grandma, but it wasn't really her. The liveliness, the joy, the happiness in her face wasn't there.
Every year on Mother's Day, my father would buy a gardenia for my mother. And gardenias are beautiful, and we all love them, and my dad loved them, and my mom loved them at a distance. But up close to her face, very pungent. and it drove her crazy. And every year she would say, "Oh, this is just so strong smelling." But every year she would dutifully wear it to church for Mother's Day, and she would say to him, "This is really strong," and he'd say, "Oh, it's so beautiful. I know, it reminds me of you." And every year she would wear the gardenia. So on her casket, here comes, I don't know who it was, somebody in our family bought her a gardenia and put it on her in the casket. I don't think it got buried with her, but anyway. A gardenia, always, even the smell of a gardenia makes me think of my mother.
When my father died, I did not take a picture of him in his casket. Somehow, I felt like it was improper. But when my mother died, my feelings changed. She was 95, but she looked 30 years younger. I wanted to remember how she looked, so peaceful and beautiful. I felt sad, but I felt more a solemn sense of joy, knowing she had endured faithfully to the very end. I had not been with her in those days before her death, so my memories of her were when she was young and full of life. I felt happy knowing that she and my father had been reunited. They had been separated for 20 years. When my father died, I felt strongly that I wanted to speak at his funeral and tell the story of the glove. When my mother died, I could not speak. I managed to give a prayer, which I had to write on a card because my emotions were so overwhelming.
I thought it was a really joyous time. I loved the funerals. It was sad to lose them, but for Mother, I was excited for her because she had lived her life at 95 and Dad was gone, and she needed to move forward. She did all she could do.
Oh, they were wonderful. My mother always said her whole life, she said, "I want my funeral to be very simple. I want a talk about the resurrection." In fact, she even had a person she wanted to give the talk, but he predeceased her. And I want to talk about the resurrection and a song. I think the song was "I Know That My Redeemer Lives." I don't remember now. And that's it. That's all she wanted at her funeral. And her funeral ended up being all of us talking about our memories of her, and we, yeah, I think the funeral was too exotic for what she had really planned.
All of the grandchildren sang "Love is Spoken Here" at her funeral. I am certain she loved that.
I thought it was a beautiful funeral. I thought it was beautiful. And I remember that somebody spoke and said that Article of Faith number 13 embodied. And that is so true. That is so true. I agree. She was virtuous, lovely, and of good report. Praiseworthy. She was wonderful.
Is she anything lovely and beautiful and of good report? She loved it.
Yeah, that was perfect. We put that scripture on the program for her funeral, the 13th article of faith, because that was true. She was always seeking out beautiful things.
It took me a long time before I could. Gosh. It's funny that this is a thing that I couldn't take her number out of my cell phone for months because I thought it's so permanent. And once I was like, obviously you can't call your grandma after she's passed away. But I remember I just couldn't take her number out of my cell phone because I wanted to still hold on to that connection, which seems kind of silly, but I just wanted to be able to still talk to Grandma.
There are grapes on the headstone. And she also said, "Jeannie, I want to put my name and my birth date on here. And then when I pass away, all you kids have to do is put my death date." And Mother, are you sure you want to do that? It seemed strange to me at the time. Mother always thought ahead. And what a blessing. So, Helen Mar, you and I went down together, do you remember? And we made sure that that was taken care of, and that was done after Mother passed away. So the headstone was all Mother's artistic talents, and I love that headstone.
One thing that I've thought of multiple times is that Grandma and Grandpa overcame hardships, and they just, giving up was never an option. They just kept going. And, I'm sure there were things in their life that were difficult, but I didn't see it. It only made them stronger, and it just, that perseverance, which, oh my, we have that in our family. We just don't ever give up. To me, to be faithful till the end of your life, that they are the epitome of enduring to the end, because that's, if you live out your life with grace and, with faithfulness like they did, that's what matters. That's a legacy.
And I treasure the love and the wonderful gift that she was my grandmother. I do.
I felt like I could never begin to express what she has meant to me. How do you thank someone who has given you life, who has lovingly and carefully cared for you for decades, every need and desire, whose almost every thought has been for your welfare? It is beyond my ability to express, or perhaps even understand. I love her with all my heart, and I look forward to the day when we can be reunited and I can tell her in person, and when we can all gather around her and sing at the top of our voices. I honor her name. I am blessed beyond measure to have such a mother.